What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to TTP Sports. The Philadelphia Flyers beat the Pittsburgh Penguins by a score of 3-2 in overtime in the first exhibition game, actually the only exhibition game for the Flyers before the round-robin tournament begins. And before I even get into the game review, I have to give a lot of credit to the NHL. The atmosphere of the arenas both in Edmonton and Toronto, they look beautiful. They look absolutely beautiful, and they did the right thing with covering all the seats, so you're not distracted by empty seats around the arena. They did a good thing by covering them all in tarps and whatever advertisement they wanted to put on there. And all the other plasma screens, all the scoreboards and all that stuff, it just makes for a nice, beautiful atmosphere. And they also did a nice job with, I wouldn't say drowning you out with the fake fan noise, the fake audience noise. And you were able to just focus on the game at hand. You were able just to focus on whatever was going on and not focus on empty seats, not being distracted by loud audience noises. And it was just a nice atmosphere overall. And I feel you just got to give credit to the NHL and what they're doing through this whole situation. And honestly, out of all the leagues, probably you have to give the NBA credit to what they're doing in their bubble. The MLB, that's an entire situation. That's for another video that's coming up. But the NHL, they did a really great job. Like, they stayed away from the USA because this whole country is a whole other story. But they went to Canada, where they have more of the situation under control. They're still in their bubble, and they're looking like they're going to get this through. They've done many tests through Phase 3 and going into Phase 4. No positive tests for COVID-19. That's a really good start. It's a really, really good start. You got to give credit to the NHL. Got to give credit to Gary Bettman. He wanted to make sure that one team lifts the Stanley Cup at the end of the playoffs. And with the plan they're going through right now, it looks like it's going to come to fruition. And just watching the first exhibition game, it was pitch perfect to watch the Battle of Pennsylvania, Flyers versus Penguins, as the very first exhibition game to bring back hockey. It was honestly a very good choice right there by the NHL. And honestly, surprisingly, for 4.5 months of not playing hockey, they haven't been on the ice in a while. Yeah, they've had their summer camp and their little scrimmages and exhibitions. But like for an actual first game exhibition, scrimmage, whatever you want to call it, it was actually pretty good. Both teams looked pretty well, and there was little things that stood out. It was a really nice game to watch. Both teams played really well, and it was a great game overall for the first game back in like so many months. It's been a very long time since we watched hockey, a very long time since sports has been basically been a part of our lives. Hey, it's only going to get better from here when you get hockey just starting up, you're getting basketball starting up, and MLB, when I just said there's that whole situation they're going through. But hey, it's sports, and we all love sports. So let's get into the game at hand. It was a very nice game between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Philadelphia Flyers. Did a nice little thing at the beginning of the game ceremony for the national anthem and all that. Very nice. And then you get into the game at hand. Very much back and forth from the beginning of the get-go. It was fast-paced. Both teams looked pretty sharp. They were maybe a little bit sluggish just because you haven't been on the ice that long since summer camp and you haven't played a game for like the past so many months. But both teams, they looked pretty good starting off, and the Flyers get an early scoring chance from Jake Voracek. He just missed tucking it in past Matt Murray, and the Penguins do score a couple minutes later. It's Connor Sheary off of a nice play from Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel. He goes right to his stick, and he puts it right by Carter Hart on the rush, and it's a 1-0 Penguins lead. But not that long after, we go halfway towards the period, and I want to get into the presentation too, because the presentation, this gives like the TVs, whatever, if you're in Canada, if you're in the US, it gives a lot more camera angles to show. And like, for some reason, I was like depicting like the camera angle they were doing like on this goal for the Flyers. I have no idea why. I'm crazy like that. I'm very nitpicky. But they had a nice little overhead shot, and this was during the Flyers goal, so you see a little nice setup play from the Flyers on the first line. A Claude Giroux on the left side, handing over it to the newly father Sean Couturier in the slot, who one-times it. It's a kind of a fluky goal because it deflects off of one of the Penguins defenders' legs and past Matt Murray, and it's a 1-1 game. and we go in towards the end of the period, and this is just a dunderhead play right here in the Penguin zone by the Pittsburgh Penguins. So you got Chris Letang behind the net. He's getting forechecked by one of the Flyers, hands it off to Evgeny Malkin, and he literally just tosses a biscuit to the middle of the ice, where Kevin Hayes just happens to be. And he takes that biscuit, does a nice little deke, and he puts it past Matt Murray for a 2-1 Flyers lead going into the period. And like I said, the majority of this first period was nice, fast-paced. Both teams were getting their chances. You could start to see as the game was going on, they were starting to get a little sluggish. Pittsburgh started to amp up as the game was going on. The Flyers started to step off the pedal a little bit, just because you could tell there was rust there. You haven't played in so long. So it was obvious one of those teams were eventually going to get really rusty. It just happened to be the Flyers. And we go through the second period. Not much really happens. Both teams get their chances. It's a pretty boring period. And then you go into the third. You can clearly tell this is a Pittsburgh period. They're lighting up the Flyers right there. And this is when Brian Elliott is in net, as Carter Hart played the first 2 periods of this game, and Brian Elliott was scheduled just to play the third period. And for Pittsburgh, it was for them, Matt Murray was going to play half of the game, and then 10 minutes into the second period, they brought in Tristan Jarry. So Jarry played the next half of the game for the Pittsburgh Penguins. In Pittsburgh, they were giving it to the Flyers during the third period, and Brian Elliott, for not playing in 4.5 months and having to come in during the third period, he looked pretty sharp. He looked really, really good. Evgeny Malkin had a lot of chances in this period. He had a couple of rushes. There was one specific play that was very nasty. He came into the zone, did a little stutter step, and shot it. Elliott made a nice blocker save, nice pad save right there. And it was basically, like I said, Pittsburgh the entire third period until the end, where they eventually tied it. It was a nice face-off play by the Malkin line. He pushes off of there. They drive the net. They get a couple rebounds and nice little saves by Brian Elliott right there. Rebounds bouncing back and forth and eventually lands on the stick of Jason Zucker. And he does tie the game at 2 goals apiece. And I've said this during the game too. I posted this on Twitter. You can follow my Twitter, Amadeo Gracia 98 on Twitter. And just like, it's not going to be Flyers hockey. It's not the first Flyers game within like the first 4.5 months without going to overtime, because that's exactly what we needed. And it was a nice overtime too. The Flyers had some decent chances. They had some really great chances actually. Pittsburgh had a couple of chances. Kevin Hayes for the Flyers had a breakaway. You thought he was going to end it right there. He tried to go 5-0. Couldn't get past Tristan Jarry at that point. But then the beautiful play that's coming up. It's a beautiful play with Travis Konecny, Scott Laughton out there. I think Shane Gostisbehere was out there too. Hands it off to Laughton, who then hands it off to Travis Konecny. And then Konecny, oh my goodness, this pass by Travis Konecny was absolutely beautiful. It was so beautiful. Puts it all the way up the ice. It's a cross-crease pass up to Scott Laughton. Takes it on the breakaway, does a little tiny toe drag, puts it top shelf past Jarry, and the Flyers win this game by a score of 3-2. And just, this is going to be the only exhibition game for the Flyers and for the Penguins, basically, before the play-in tournament starts and the round-robin tournament starts. And it's going to be an exciting week for just NHL fans in general. But for the Flyers standpoint and for the Pittsburgh standpoint, both teams looked really well. And you could and when you told that Pittsburgh was getting more of the amp up in that third period, I feel like they were getting that amp up just because they have to play in the not in the round robin tournament. They got to play in the play-in tournament that's coming up in a few days. So like those games in the play-in tournament are more meaningful because that basically decides who's going to be in the actual playoff tournament. And for the Flyers, since they're going to be in the round robin tournament, I discussed this on the Florida podcast that I host with Chris Mayer on Flyers Fan Mania 93 on YouTube. You should go subscribe to him. And I'll put a link down for the podcast in the description so you can go watch that on Apple, on Spotify, on any podcast platform. But I feel like, I explained this on the podcast, that I feel the round-robin tournament, even though there's points and it means something, there's reseeding that's going along with the 1 through 4 spots in each conference, I do kind of feel like it's a glorified exhibition series, just because they're going off of regular season rules. All those teams that are in the round robin tournament, they're going to be in the first round of the playoffs regardless of whether they win or lose the round robin tournament in general. Wherever they seed, they're going to be in that first round of the playoffs. So I kind of explained it as a glorified exhibition series for each team. And even though I do expect it's going to be an exciting time watching the Flyers hockey, just because, one, Flyers hockey, Stanley Cup playoffs. Playoff hockey is one of the best things in the world. Granted, yes, that is very much biased because I'm a huge hockey fan, but Stanley Cup playoffs, they're a very good, very great thing. It's fun to watch. And just seeing that we're getting a ton of exhibition games on right now. I'm currently watching the Edmonton Oilers versus the Calgary Flames, the Battle of Alberta. It's a nice time right now. We're getting all these sports back. Hockey is starting up this week with all the exhibitions, and I think Saturday starts the play-in tournament. And then the Flyers, they won't play until Sunday. That's when the round-robin tournament starts against the Boston Bruins. I think that's going to be like a 3 p.m. start on NBC. And just like I said, you got to give a lot of credit to the NHL and Gary Bettman. They made sure they were going through the process. They wanted to make sure this thing was going to go the right way. They brought it to Canada, where everything is more under control. They put everyone in the bubble, and they're putting their strict guidelines out there when teams are in the bubble, and it's working out good. They've done so many tests over Phase 3 and into Phase 4 with little to none positive tests, which is a very good thing. And you could say the same thing about basketball too. Even though like they're in one of the major hot spots in Miami, Florida, they've done so many tests too, and they've had no positive test, and they have very strict guidelines for when players do leave the bubble. And I'm going to explain this in another video when I talk about the whole thing going on with baseball right now. But like, the bubble works. It's shown in basketball, it's shown in hockey that the bubble works, and you gotta give credit to the NHL for what they're doing right here. And just overall for this game in general, it's a very nice game to watch. I feel like a lot of people did really well in this game, especially when you're looking at Carter Hart when he had a little bit of those back spasms coming off of practice a week and a half ago. Looked pretty well in this game. The big thing that for him was going into it was getting used to basically there being no fans. And you have to imagine, what is it like for a hockey player to play in an arena, especially during the Stanley Cup playoffs, when there is no fans in there? That's got to be very, very weird. I would never know what it is like. I would not know what that feels like at all. But I can guarantee that the players, that it kind of feels weird. But I understand it when you're in the game action, you're really not paying attention to anything. But it definitely, from a player standpoint, that's got to feel a little awkward and a little weird, just because you're not hearing any fan noise and there's no one in the stands. It's basically just everything is covered in a tarp. But hey, it's gonna be playoff hockey no matter what. But like I said, it's gonna be very weird with no fans. But it's going to be a fun time watching Flyers hockey, them getting ready for the playoffs, and just hearing the goal song, Feel the Shake. I don't know why that goal song sucks, but it's good. It's good. And honestly, there hasn't been that much hype for a Flyers team going into the playoffs for a long time, because we all know the entire problem with them being in mediocrity. It's been a tough decade for the Flyers. And there's been a lot of hype for them going into those playoffs because the team has been amazing this year. They've been one of the best in the NHL. They are a very deep team. They can roll out 4 lines. They can roll out the defenseman. And they have a goaltender in Carter Hart. And they also have a very nice backup in Brian Elliott. And going into this playoffs, it's going to be Carter Hart's net. It's going to be his for the taking. And this is going to be his playoffs to gain his experience and possibly bring the Flyers to the promised land, where we've been waiting for the goaltender basically forever, and we finally have Carter Hart. And let's see what he can do in these playoffs. Let's see what a bunch of Flyers can do in these playoffs. Like, and specifically in this game, Kevin Hayes had an amazing game. Sean Couturier had a great game. Claude Giroux, all those guys, Travis Konecny, Scott Laughton. Honestly, if you look at the defensive pair too, Ivan Provorov logged in 25 minutes of ice time, and it's an exhibition game, and he played 25 total minutes. The guy's a beast. He logs in so many minutes, and for him to play as many games as a season, he hasn't missed one game in his entire career, and he's logging like 20 to 22 minutes a night. And the first exhibition game back, he plays 25 minutes. That just shows you what the kind of player Ivan Provorov is. And it's going to be a very exciting time getting hyped for the Flyers playoff starts and for the round robin that starts on Sunday. So, what are your thoughts on the Flyers game against the Penguins today? What are your thoughts on them going into the round robin tournament? What are your thoughts on hockey being back in general? So, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, the Flyered Up Podcast, that me and Flyers Fan Mania 93 host. So I'll leave that link in the description below. So thank you for watching this episode, and I will see you next time.